opportunity for our guests to come and speak about something that they're really passionate about and a message that they want to put out there. And I believe that, as the African proverb says, it takes a whole village to raise a child. Also, like John F. Kennedy, ask not what your country could do for you, but what you could do for your country. But I believe more importantly, it's what our communities could do for each other. And some people out here have been doing some really amazing things that I believe has a positive impact on our communities. And today we have two guests, Enrica and Diana. And what are you going to be talking about today?
Well, today we're talking about a movement that's happening across the United States. It's about whole food, plant-based nutrition, and it is reversing disease, and it's getting into hospital. There's a program at Bellevue that has 100 participants that are going to be put on whole food, plant-based nutrition, and they will be reversing their blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, various chronic diseases, and we're excited. We're excited to tell you about it.
And what is Plant Pure, whole plant pure, as opposed to, being vegan or being vegetarian?
Right. So Plant Pure means just staying whole, whole food, plant-based, which means eating pretty much from the ground. So that includes whole grains, vegetables, fruits, and legumes, with no oil added to the food. So staying really as much as close to nature as possible. When compared to veganism, it's more of an ethical movement for the care for animals and the cruelty that goes behind that. And so the nutrition or the diet along with that, it may not be as health promoting for our health. It involves a lot of processed food, a lot of oily foods. So this is a more different approach to, than veganism. It's a more optimal way of eating.
And so tell me more about this movement and where it originated.
Well, it started with Dr. Campbell. He's a biochemist. He is well known for the China study. He realized in this China study that you can turn cancer on and off. The science has been out for a long time, but special interests and lobbyists have kept the information away from us. And so...
What do you think that is?
Well, you can't compete with agriculture and the dairy industry. You just can't compete. It's too powerful. So thank God for documentaries, and thank God for his son, Nelson Campbell, because he came out with a documentary called Plant Pure Nation, and he proved in that documentary that you can put somebody on a 10-day jump start. That's whole food, plant-based nutrition, and within that movie they took biometrics at the beginning of the diet, of the jump start, and at the end, and the results were absolutely radical. And they took it into the government to make changes, and it got squashed. And so the call to action at the end of the movie was to start pods or groups, and they call them pods because we're planting the seeds of change, and they're growing exponentially throughout the country. And we are a pod in Queens, and there's a pod in Manhattan called Plant Powered Manhattan. There's a pod in Staten Island, in Long Island.
Right.
So, and if anybody wants to find a pod, they could go to plantpurecommunities.org, and they could find a local pod. And the purpose is to find out what's going on, educate yourself on the science of nutrition.
Right. So what takes place at these pods? And give me an example. Is it you guys eat together? Do you guys, how does it work?
We get together, we invite, members of the pod to come and join us. They can bring food that is, of course, surrounded by our, what we believe in, which is a whole food, plant-based way of eating foods. And we come together, we bring out, we inform the members as to what, things that could be coming up. Doctors are invited as well to come into these, meetings, and they can educate the members on the optimal ways of, keeping, your body healthy. So, and how to also learn how to cook at home, recipes. We also have a Facebook page called Plant Power Queens. Anyone is welcome to join. And you get a lot of very, very important information on the page. Recipes posted, a lot of science from these very well, known researchers and scientists and doctors that have, have exposed this information for everyone to have.
And also we have Dr. Neil Barnard coming
Correct.
to New York City in January,
Yes.
and he's a pioneer in diabetes. He has proven through scientific studies that you can reverse type 2 diabetes, and he'll be coming to New York City. So seats are limited, and it's going to be great, and he's going to be talking about...
This will be when, in January?
In January at the JCC in New York City. And he's not only going to talk about how you can reverse type 2 diabetes, but he's also going to be talking about dementia, I believe, and some other stuff. There's so many chronic diseases that could be reversed through whole food plant-based nutrition.
Well, one thing you just mentioned, which was kind of exciting and enthralling at the same time, you said doctors. The reason why I say that, because Hippocrates, the father of Western medicine, about 2,400 years ago, said, "Let thy food be let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food." But interesting enough, in our country, nutrition is not really taught in medical schools. And herein lies the conflict, and perhaps what you were saying before, Enrica, about suppressing some information, because, and I've talked about this before my show. I was interviewed here by someone else, and the talk was the ills of the medical industrial complex. And I talked about the interrelationship and the politics of like the Food and Drug Administration and the medical, community and the pharmaceutical industry and so on. So you're in direct competition if, you're suggesting, not suggesting, but actually shown and been proven that by pursuing this line of diet in someone, that actually reverses some chronic illnesses that were been plagued for quite many decades, where the current medical industry have only managed these illnesses, have not found a cure for it. You're saying that there's reverses like type 2 diabetes and
heart
other
disease.
things as well. So I find that exciting when you're saying that doctors are joining this movement, if you will, and to realize that nutrition is an important aspect, and why it's not being talked about.
Right. But it's got to move faster, because we're having casualties after casualties out there. So the people who are getting it and are reversing their disease, I'm for one of them, are shouting it from the mountaintops. Eric Adams, the Brooklyn Borough president, he reversed his type 2 diabetes. He was losing his eyesight. He was having some nerve damage, and he was told by some doctors it's hereditary and you can't reverse it. And he went to, he Googled how to reverse diabetes and found Dr. Esselstyn, another pioneer who's talked about and has shown reversal of heart disease. And he showed him how to reverse it, and he did. He's off his meds, and his mother, who was on insulin for many years, is now reversed her diabetes. So we have to talk about it, and thank you for putting us on the show, so we can get the word out.
No, of course.
Thank you.
Yes. In regards to Eric Adams, as you talked about, also something that was really exciting also was the Jerry Brown in California, right?
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
In California, if you're in a hospital or if you're in the prison, you have a right to be fed plant-based meal. It's mandatory.
How amazing
And
is that?
Wow.
soon to come to New
Times
York,
are
I'm sure.
changing.
Especially if Eric Adams has anything to do with it. If he becomes mayor, that's something he's going to be working on.
So how did it I mean, I'm it's so exciting to hear this. What did California do? What did Jerry Brown do to make this happen? I mean, to make it mandatory?
I can't speak to you about policy. I can only tell
Wow.
you what it has done for me personally. I had my health issues for a long time, and when I realized it was the food, that's when I dove in and went whole food plant-based. And it's so radical for me and for so many people that I can't say that I'm going back to any other way. I think it's what the human body is meant to ingest. And I used to be a meat and potato girl.
Yeah, coming from an Italian culture, yes.
Exactly.
But it's not just happening in California. Things are coming here as well. We have Montefiore, we have Bellevue.
Yes,
Bellevue
that's
has
true.
just opened their wellness clinic there, where they're treating patients with plant-based foods. And also in Montefiore, in their cardiac unit, they treat patients with plant foods.
Right.
So it's coming here. It's definitely spreading.
And
We're very
and
positive.
we should say the pioneers at Montefiore is Dr.
Yeah.
Robert Osfeld,
Correct.
a pioneer. Michelle
McMacken, yeah.
McMacken is in Bellevue, another pioneer.
Correct.
Neil Barnard coming to New York City, don't miss it, another pioneer. These are the doctors that are leading the way, and we need to encourage them. And
Well, this is only public access TV, and it's a step, right? But I would love to hear this and these pioneers be on a mainstream show. How great would it be for them to be in 60 Minutes, right? On CBS or something like this. Is that something that this movement is looking, as a goal?
it's picking up speed. It's picking up speed. So just to give you an idea, we were all separate pods, and because we're picking up speed, we're going to be becoming one big pod in the metro area.
Okay.
So just
Yeah.
an indication that
Right.
it's picking up speed. But again, there's casualties, so we can't move fast enough.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing, though. I mean, if people have accepted and have gotten used to it, to these casualties, So when and there's always some quote unquote gimmick out there. Someone's like, oh, you follow this, you do this, and so on. You're gonna be in a different place. It's gonna be cured, and so on. So I think a lot of people are skeptical.
There's
It
a lot
sounds
of noise.
Sounds too good to be true. What they say. So what are the challenges that your movement have encountered?
Well, perhaps, challenges from those that want to keep their status quo, in place. That's why we're doing this as a grassroots movement, because if you approach it from the top, and it has been tried, Nelson Campbell went up there with some legislator to try to get the movement and the bills passed from the top about a plant-based foods, and it just didn't go through. So what did he do? He said, well, this has to be then tackled from the bottom up. So that's why this has to go from the, from in the communities. This starts in the communities.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful strategy in many different ways, especially because when you have a friend or a loved one that they've been struggling with whatever issue that they've been dealing with, whether it's affecting their health or just their well-being as a whole, and all of a sudden they get involved in this jump start, as you mentioned, and things start changing for them. They're a witness. You can't disregard that, because it's like, this is who I am. My friends knew what I was experiencing. My loved ones knew what I was going through and where I was. Now seeing is believing, and this is where I am. So now you have a group of people that are witnesses to basically say, this is what's happening and this is what's going on.
Yeah.
There's no refuting that.
The problem, Marcella, is that that is anecdotal, right? So it's word of mouth.
Right.
You need to have this published studies. So just like cigarette smoking, how many studies, like 6,000 published studies before they were able to put the label on a pack of cigarettes saying smoking will kill you, right? So we're here to tell you, don't wait for 6,000 studies. Listen to what we're saying, it's happening. Take control and feel empowered, and you can change your health. You can get off blood pressure medication, your cholesterol pills, diabetes. There's actually a study that just started this October upstate. Dr. Campbell's son, I think, is leading the study, and he got a lot of money from the National Institute of Health. And he's taking women with stage 4 breast cancer.
Stage 4?
Stage 4 metastatic.
Yes.
I can never remember that word. And they're going on a whole food plant-based diet. And the results will be in next October. And I don't know the specifics. They might be on some medication also. And then the other group might not be. One group will be on the diet.
There's a control group.
Right,
yes.
the control group. So I feel very confident that those results are going to be amazing because they've already done it with prostate cancer.
That's so exciting.
Very exciting.
You know, I think it gives people an opportunity for hope, where I think a lot of people have just kind of given up on that, and it's an atrocity, basically what's happening in our society as far as healthcare and so on. I mean, I for one, I had my 50th high school reunion back in 2015, and nobody had even hit the age of 50 yet, and we had already lost, I believe, 22 classmates by that age, and I think I would say about 80% of them was due to cancer. And so it's and I think people have gotten to the point where it's just like, it is what it is. And like previous show I was talking about was like, I do not like that terminology. It is what it is, because people like have given up and just accept it for what it is. And your movement here is providing an alternative that is really giving people the opportunity to really drastically change their lives for the better.
We're in the middle of a health crisis. I mean,
definitely.
We've been in the middle of a health crisis for quite a long time.
Right, and it's not reversing. It's not reversing. But whole food plant-based nutrition is. It's making a difference.
Right.
I think that the biggest problem is getting people to recognize the paradigm shift. They're so used to just popping a pill. You've got diabetes, pop the metformin.
Quick fix,
Right? They're just so used to it, and it was kind of like when people thought the world was flat, and then all of a sudden somebody came around and said the world is round.
Right.
How many people called you crazy? And right, like the paradigm shift is so intense, and that's where we're at right now.
I mean, when a patient goes to their doctor and the doctor tells them, well, you have a chronic disease, you're going to have to take medication for the rest of your life, you're going to have to live with your disease for the rest of your life, I think that's a pretty alarming, sign that you need to just like say to yourself, I got to run out of this office right away. This is not the answer, because there's another route, there's another way out. And there's no such thing as living with a chronic disease, except for a very small percentage, like sickle cell, for example, very complicated diseases, or type 1 diabetes, which does need a little bit of medication to control it. And of course, diet definitely helps a whole lot. But when a doctor says this to you, it's absolutely not true. And there's a lot of hope and proven research and scientific data that proves that a whole food plant-based diet is definitely preventing and reversing disease. So,
do you know that Plant Pure communities will actually tell you how to go in and speak to your doctor about whole food plant-based nutrition? Because imagine going to a doctor and telling him, hey, I heard that my friend reversed their diabetes. Just like we said before, the world was flat versus the world is round.
Right.
It's the same thing. He's going to look at you like, what are you talking about?
So I'm assuming there's obviously doctors. I mean, if there's if you have a certain type of program where you're teaching people to talk to their doctors, and they go speak to their doctor, and their doctor feel threatened. They're like, basically, hey, if people really start catching on to this, there's no more need for them.
Marcello, I don't even know if they feel threatened. I think they just can't even hear it. They can't even hear it. They see patients every 7 minutes. The profession is having a meltdown as well, right? I heard from one doctor that there's like a suicide rate for doctors is 400 a year right now.
Correct. Yeah, it's pretty high.
We're in a bad place between what the medical profession is going through and our health crisis.
It's because it's a very narrow way of treating a patient. I mean, they are just only, limited to whatever the pharmaceutical industry is providing. And those pharmaceuticals are just patching, an illness. It's not treating the root cause of the illness. So when you put a Band-Aid on the illness, you're going to come back again and again and again and again.
But that's what they want, would you think?
So it's more of a disease maintenance system.
Right. It's disease management. So everything's management.
Correct.
Pain management, this management, and so on. But what I see, and that's what I talked about as well on that show, was that the pharmaceutical industry, they're more concerned about their shareholders and keeping the shareholders happy. So it's almost it's a conflict of interest because it's basically legalized, drugs, and you got to keep your customers keep coming back. So you don't want to find a cure because then they will stop.
Correct.
So that's what I'm saying. Some doctors are probably aware of this, and some feel threatened that, like, you know what? If I have a patient that's going to keep coming back to me who has type 2 diabetes for the rest of their lives taking this medication, I don't want he or she to go elsewhere, go somewhere else, and where Plant Pure is providing them an opportunity to get off medication and to reverse it. They're not dependent upon that again. So it's creating that competition. So depending on who that patient is, with that patient, I think sometimes there's a generation situation here where the baby boomers still believe that the majority of them believe that they're God. The doctors are gods. And they won't question them, and they'll believe whatever they say, and take it to the bank. Where maybe other generations maybe feel like, wait a second, no, I have to question certain things. This is what I've seen with my eyes, this is what I felt, this is what I've witnessed with other people, so I am going to my doctor and ask those questions, and and so on. But that's what I see as well. I mean, when this movement starts really picking up speed, you're eventually going to run into that situation, and I think we talked about this, Enrica, at one point in time, and so I always like to, be aware of what the challenges are going to be, so we know how to encounter it.
Marcello, I don't agree with that. I think that the system is so broken that we don't have a choice to move in a different direction.
No, I agree with you in that regard. What I'm saying is it's going to come to head because some people, like you said, they're going to try to oppress the information out there. They're going to try to say that you guys are the kooks. It's not true. It's some kind of scam or whatever. And even, look, and we see what's happening today, just not in this particular field, but like the whole thing about, quote unquote, the fake news. Oh, this is fake stuff.
Or a conspiracy theory.
Right, exactly. And so, and even though people may be looking at these studies, they may be coming out, and like you said, I can't wait long enough for those studies to come up. But even if they're seeing that their next-door neighbor or their family member or a friend have reversed a particular type of illness where before it wasn't, even with that unrefutable evidence, that some people are just like, whatever. And we could just say, forget those people. Those other people that are on that movement and have jumped on that movement and continue to scream from the mountaintop, as you say, those are what we should focus on. And eventually people will jump on the bandwagon because, like you said, you're right. It's a crisis, and people are just fed up. People are dying. People are suffering.
That's right.
And they don't want to be doing that anymore. So regardless of what happens, they're going to say, you know what? I see what's happening for my friend, I see what's happening to my family, I see what's happening to my neighbor, I'm jumping on that. You know?
And when they see the results, the very positive results, their, labs totally get better. Their cholesterol gets better, their hypertension gets better, they feel lighter, they lose weight, they sleep better at night, they have less inflammation. When they see all of those great things happening, they're going to spread it around to their mom, their family, their friends, and these will become, a whole change, that will impact so many people. So this is what our main goal is here, to have that positive change happen to them, and then the spread very far and wide will occur.
We just had a jump start last month. No, was it this month in
Correct,
Harlem?
yeah, Harlem.
We had 35 participants, Medicaid participants out of Somos.
Right.
And
With Planned Parenthood communities,
Planned Parenthood communities, and I think the blood work was fantastic. The results. Within 10 days, there was as much as 10 pounds in weight
Within
loss.
10 days.
Right.
That's how quickly.
Yeah.
Wow. That says a lot.
Yeah. And the people were sleeping better, like I mentioned. Their numbers got better, and they were very excited. Yeah.
Had no chest pain.
So very promising.
Great results.
Extremely.
So what are because it is a major change in lifestyle. Like you said, for you're a meat potatoes type of gal, so to be able to make that transition from for this and so on, what are the things that people that start with a jump start and so on, what are the things that they're saying that are most challenging, most difficult, which obviously they surpass, but it's good to know, so if other people that want to do this, so they know what to anticipate and how to get support to continue on that path.
Well, if you want to do a jump start, the most difficult thing is to prepare the food, to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner prepared. So Plant Pure Nation actually has meals that you can order from, so that would make it easy, or at least get you familiar and get you started on how to eat. So I would say that's probably the biggest hurdle if you're making a transition. Then there's Plant Pure pods throughout the country that you can call upon for support, for weekly meetings. You could call anybody in the pod and they'll support you. If anybody needs help in transitioning, they could reach me or Diana. We'll be happy to assist and help them transition, give them a grocery list, go through their cupboards, cook together.
The cook together thing, I remember there was a gentleman that I met, then we went to that Italian restaurant. He was
Rocco.
That's the
that was the
restaurant.
chef, actually.
Right. But there was a gentleman that I met that he runs a pod in the Bronx, I believe.
Roger.
Right.
Right.
His
pod is called The Bronx.
The Bronx, is it? Right. And I believe he shared that he works with a church or congregation where they come together and they cook together. I think that would be such a great way for people to get support, because sometimes,
Definitely.
you work with, you may be a person in a family where you're willing to do so, but the rest of the family still wants to eat the way they used to. So it's kind of hard to kind of have that kind of support in the way, and so on. But if they have actually be part of a community such as a church that way, where they come together and they get support, they cook together and everything else, I think that would be an easier thing for them to do, going along those lines.
And for those that don't have the time, they can also go online and search, go to Plant Pure Communities, .org or .com? .org. And then there's a toolbox there, or a toolkit, where they can find a lot of resources about how to transition, what types of books to read, what kind of documentaries to watch. There's also recipes or resources on recipes. Forks Over Knives is another great website where people can find great recipes as well.
And the movie, the documentary, is full of a lot of
Correct.
science.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
And
wonderful.
for those that mentally, have these very cultural entrenched, kind of like preventing them from, making the switch, or preventing them from making it hard to transition from certain foods that they're so used to all their lives to others. There's a great book called The Pleasure Trap, and that really explains, why people are just so, stuck in the way that they believe, and what, and the whole deal around that, it's a whole mental thing, and how to change that. how to change the way that we approach, the things that we do, and affects our whole lives, including what we eat that could be damaging our health.
Right.
Yeah. So
Right.
The Pleasure Trap is a definitely great book, and there are also probably videos on the Pleasure Trap on YouTube, and you can search it up on the internet, and can tell you a lot of tips that you can do to readjust the way you think and the paradigm shift as well.
There's so many small changes that people could start making.
Oh, yes.
Like switching from dairy to plant-based milk, to cashew, almonds, soy, rice, oatmeal milk. So many milks. You can switch from dairy cheese to almond cheese, cashew cheese, macadamia ricotta. Right?
And it's interesting, you said
Yes.
like the milks, because that's something that's been talked about for quite a long time now. But that's something that people are already used to, because you know about the almond milks and the soy milks and so on. So it's already, some people may have an easier transition with that because they're already so used to seeing it, even if they have not been part of it, and they realize, okay, it's been out there for quite a long time.
The yogurts are out there too now.
Right.
You can start switching to the plant-based yogurts.
Yeah. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: How did both of you stumble upon this? What was your story that got you to where you are now?
How we start the part?
How were you introduced to this? How did you come?
I came to it because I had irritable bowel syndrome my entire life, and I was living with it. I thought, I just have a sensitive system, right? And then I had a partner who was very science-oriented and started reading about what goes into milk. I think carrageenan was an emulsifier that's in milk and inflammatory. So between leaving the dairy and then picking a milk without carrageenan, I realized this is it. This is what was causing the inflammation. And then one thing led to another, and you go deeper and deeper, and then Plant Pure Nation came out, and you start realizing, wow, it's the food.
So your journey was basically just getting information, reading. It's not somebody came and like tapped you on the shoulder, Enrica, look.
No, it was documentaries and realizing, in my particular case, it was milk.
Then was that the same for you as well?
Well, for me, it was really more of a vegan ethical movement. I just, and plus I didn't think that the human body really needs any animal products to be very healthy and live well. So I started out as a vegetarian, and when I watched the documentary Food Inc., then I watched the documentary Earthlings, and that was a definite, end of any animal product whatsoever for me. Then I said, wait, then after I read the China study by Dr. T. Colin Campbell, I said, wait a minute, there's a way that we can eat even healthier, even better for more optimal health. And that really totally turned me around. I cut on the oils, and I adopted a more wholesome, whole plant-based way of eating. So that's the way I got here. And my numbers definitely improved, my labs. I used to have always a bit of a higher cholesterol, like 203, 205. Now it's way below that, 160. And wow, I was like so impressed with myself. The sugar levels also went down, and I actually was very close to getting gestational diabetes when I was pregnant with my 2 children. And so I said, wow, I'm gonna have diabetes when I'm older. How I cannot let this happen. And so now my sugars are always like in the 80s. So I'm far away from even becoming pre-diabetic at this point. And so it's a great thing to see. The numbers speak for themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's really wonderful. So what is your vision? Do you have a plan, like, by the end of 2019, I hope that, this is where I envision, Planned Parenthood Queens to be, with so many members and having so many jump starts and so on. Do you have any?
We Planned Parenthood Manhattan and Planned Parenthood Queens and Plant Pure Long Island. Some of these pods have been around within the last year, and because we're picking up speed, we're coming together. So we're already coming together to kick it up to the next level. We're going to be starting fundraisers, advertising campaigns. We're going to be doing whatever it takes to come together and leverage the power that we've already accumulated.
Yeah.
And what other, I guess, entities or organizations, if you will, that you believe could be good allies to support you in this?
Well, Dr. Neil Barnard has Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. Great title, huh?
Mm-hmm.
He does a lot. You could go to his website and read all about the science there. Who else do we have? A lot of plant-based doctors.
Right. Well, I'm thinking also alongside where this whole movement really started with the grassroots. And I'm thinking of different organizations within communities where they may, be able to do multi-pronged type of things to support you in, getting the word out there, getting people involved. I introduced you to some members at my congregation. I think that would be a great way, as the gentleman, I forgot his name, in the Bronx, working with the churches and so on. Because it's, it's almost like kind of set up in a way that those faith-based communities are looking for the spiritual wellness of people, and that obviously grows into everything else. So you think that would be kind of a natural ally that you would have, mainly because it's people come together there anyway, and if you have somebody working along that, I'm just thinking out loud as we're talking here about getting the word out and getting more people involved and spreading the word. So I was just thinking that perhaps it's another way to go about it as well.
I'm trying to get into my local parish as well.
Mm-hmm.
But you go in, you knock on the door, you tell them, and people can't make the shift.
Right.
We were talking about a funny story in the car about a parody about two young fish swimming along the ocean, and there's an older fish that comes by them and says, "Good evening, fish. Lovely water we're having today." And the two fish look at each other after the older fish goes by and goes, "Water? What water?" People are not getting it. So that's the hardest part. So we go, we knock on doors at our local parish, but we have to go back. We have to go back. And we have people in the pods that are working on policy. They're doing the same thing. They have to go back, like Natasha in Staten Island. She has been knocking on doors in Staten Island regarding policy, and she's starting to make some great segue.
Right.
Yeah, because when you see hospitals and what they serve patients, for example, in the hospital, patients are in very delicate conditions, a lot of them, and they're being served these really unhealthy options, drinks that are filled with sugar and chemicals, and these poor patients are very, very fragile. Why can't we bring, freshly squeezed juices, plant-based meals? How about the schools? How about the future of this country, the future of the world? If we don't feed, the young appropriately, how can we aspire to have a future, of children that are strong, energetic, and ready to take on, what we have left behind, to either fix it or maintain it? How can we aspire if we're feeding them the worst, French fries and mozzarella sticks? How can we, these young, children think throughout their day and focus on their work if they're not properly eating?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we need to impact those areas that need the most.
So obviously, from the things that you both mentioned here, and going back and I see that knocking the doors and coming back again, it's an evolutionary process.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, you could see, it's exciting from what you're sharing with me that these pods are coming together now and you're moving to the next step. And it's interesting because what's great about grassroots movements is that the pace sometimes can pick up really quickly and it can happen overnight, because sometimes it just clicks and people do get it. But there's such an imperative because people are dying, people are suffering,
Yes.
you know. So there's a
Yes.
major incentive to like get on a wagon, you know, and move along. You know, so that's definitely exciting, and you know, I'm glad that you've come on to this show to share this. And in the last moments here, what do you want to say to our viewers? What's one thing that you want to definitely get out there to them?
I think that all you need is to just, you know, want to make a change for yourself. Take back your health, you know, be in charge of yourself and your life and your health, and be open to what's natural. Because after all, hey, we're all natural beings, right? We come from nature, and nature has sustained humanity for such a long time. I mean, we've come this far, so we don't want to be the end. We don't want this to end now. We want to continue very healthy and very strong for what's coming in the future. So this is a great way to start. You know, a whole food plant-based will do that. Will keep you healthy, strong.
And Enrica, and please finish off by, you know, giving a way for people to contact you and know where you are. So, you know,
If people want to contact any pod, go to plantpurecommunities.org. And if they want to get involved in the metro area, we're Plant Powered Queens, there's Plant Powered Manhattan, Plant Pure Long Island, the Bronx, and Natasha's
Staten Island?
in Staten Island. I forget the name of her pod now. I'm sorry, I'm having a moment, but you could find it on.
and I think you
Plant
told
Pure
me
Communities.
people they could start their own pods as well.
And people could start their
Oh,
own pods, right?
absolutely.
You
Yeah.
could start a pod in your in your office.
Right.
You could start a pod in your parish. You could start a pod anywhere. It's just people
Right.
coming together and saying, what are these people talking about? Let's watch this documentary. And you know, while we go for that documentary to watch it together, let's bring some potluck and we'll share some food and try a few recipes.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, coming together
Fantastic.
for a
And
common
feeling
purpose.
empowered about your health.
Yes.
Because the human body is incredible. And if you give it the right nourishment, it reacts in an amazing way.
Absolutely.
A powerful way.
You're right.
Absolutely.
Well, ladies, thank you so much for joining us. And I just want to say thank you for our viewers for joining us on another show. Until next time, and happy holidays.